Hello, sisters. All right, so today we are graced with the presence of Momo. Momo! How are you, Momo? With your purse, Momo? Hey, Tossstones. Hey, Grey Witched. What do you mean you just discovered those, Julia? But what are they? Did I just discover them also? What? Oh my god! Matt Adams says, seriously, the face journey Benji went on while reading that made my day. Dude, what the fuck did I just read? Like, okay. You know, I'm kind of like biphobic in a lot of ways. Like some people would say that about me, but I literally felt that this essay was biphobic because it's like what a bisexual, and it's like it was like contradicting itself. Like at the beginning, it was like, yeah, like lots of bisexuals have like contemporaneous relationships with both men and women, and I was like, okay, like she had like these two case studies of Barbara and Allison, right? Was Allison the one who was married? But basically, the one who was married and had a kid, she was what we in this time period would call like polyamorous, really. And it's like she was representing that as bisexuality, and I was like, isn't that like offensive to bisexuals? And then like, I mean, I don't know, man. The whole essay, I was like, what? I felt like I was reading a Tumblr post. Yeah, I think we're gonna get through the analysis of this pretty quickly. It's not like the last essay where I had like all kinds of like introspective thoughts. Rachel says swingers, yes. Polyamory is polygamy wrapped up in woke packaging. Yes, very true. Oh my god, oh my god. Okay, what is the name? I used to be one of these people. What, a relationship anarchist or something? What do you call that shit? You know what I'm talking about? Um, sorry. I hope that the clicky clacky wasn't too loud. I thought I muted myself. My keyboard is very clicky clacky. It's like one of the kind of old school type keyboards, but it's like with lights. Yeah, I used to be like, Benji, your hair goes really fast. Yeah, I know. But I have my own buzzer, so now that it's been buzzed, I'll just keep buzzing it like every 3 weeks or whatever. Rachel says, I refuse to date poly people no matter how often they call me a prude or bigot. Yes. I used to be like, okay, the reason I bring this up, at some point in the essay, she brings up this like continuum that apparently only bisexuals are capable of, which is like, that there's like a continuum. Like, it's not just like platonic or sexual, your relationships. It's like platonic, sexual, and everything in between. And I'm like, to bring that up as like a thing that only bisexuals can experience or are capable of is very bizarre to me, because so many feminists talk about that, and like not even in a lesbian situation, just as like a woman to woman like sisterhood situation. So I'm like, that was just really strange to me. And also it brought me back. I totally forgot, like there's so much stuff that I'm like, I've told all my story on my YouTube channel so many times, and I think, no, you know what I remember? I used to be like a relationship anarchist. And then I think I eventually started calling myself poly because it was more like mainstream and comprehensible to people in the community, like in the LGBT. And why did I call myself this? Because I had like emotionally intimate relationships with like my friends, but it wasn't sexual. I didn't want it to be sexual, but I was like, this isn't just like my friend. This is like an important person to me. And I was like, yeah, like fuck society and like the rules don't make sense and everything. And I was like, just I don't know. That when she brought it up and I was thinking about myself at like 15 with all this crap, and I'm like, I makes her feel like it makes me feel like she's really immature, even though that's like obviously like my own shit, but it's like that's just what I thought about. Um, which noises? Clairvolt, which noises? Oh, the clicky clacky of the keyboard. Yeah, my bad. Usually I mute it before I use the keyboard. Um, okay. Oh, Akko told me to give Momo a treat. I'm gonna get her. No, don't move. All right. Let's get through this. Oh no, wait. Before we get started, let's talk like who the frig is Rebecca Shuster. Okay. So Rebecca Shuster at the okay, this is the description that's in the book. So this is like in 1987. This is who she was. Rebecca Shuster, BA, is an assistant director of Building Bridges, an organization that offers workshops and concerts on relationships between women and men and race relations. She is a counselor and writer and travels nationally, speaking and leading workshops focused on issues of intimacy and sexuality. She is a past director of Wesleyan University's Sexual Health Information Services and was a 1982 to 1983 Watson Fellow. Okay. I mean, in this, she's talking all about like validating, blah blah blah. Like it's very woke. It's like she was ahead of the curve, I think. Well, her entire publication. Okay, she has one publication that has 0 reviews and 0 ratings for 2008. Kane's Son, Males and Masculinity and Alien. And she has 2 publications, which I think are the same, and somebody's put them in twice. Madness and the Absent Father, Analysis of Esther's Mental Illness in the Bell Jar. Which is like interesting. Oh my god, Tree Lady. Thank you for sending me a recommendation on Goodreads, by the way. Are we friends? We are friends. Okay. I don't know who you are, but you were definitely in the stream yesterday. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, what I get from this is that she is some wokey type. She's not some super academic-y type. Oh, Frau! Guten Abend. It's been a while. Also, as usual, I mean, I didn't say hi to anyone in the last stream, but, like, you know, obviously, hello to all of you. Okay. Right. I have to be honest, I was kind of so disappointed in this essay. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be amazing just because it was like sexuality is a continuum. Like, what did I think? But I kind of want to like do this in like half an hour and then start the next essay. We'll see. Okay. Because like I called in sick to work this morning for the first time since I've been working there. I slept all day. So I feel very prepared to read for like 4 hours. All right, let's go through this from the beginning. Okay, so the first thing she brings up is that like she thinks it's important. Yeah, no, I don't know that it'll be better either, but I think once we get through the identity section of the book that it will become better. So I want to like power through the first 5 essays. Yeah, awkward. There's so many mods because you guys are like in every single one of my streams or every other one of my streams. So I know you all like you're always there. Ruh-roh, Mr. Cat's awake. Mama, are you awake? Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna try to kind of ignore the live chat and actually talk about the thing instead of talking to the live chat for like an hour and a half like yesterday. Okay. So the first thing she says, she thinks it's an important thing for lesbian psychology to understand bisexuality. At first, my knee-jerk reaction was like, no. But actually, I think yes, because not for the reasons that she puts out here that are all bullshit. I think that it's important, like, because this book is like for therapists and like counseling and shit, right? So in that context, there are a lot of women, like even in here, well, I'm not going to start naming names. Can't remember all your names, to be honest, who feels this way. But we've had discussions on this channel where most of us are lesbians and we're talking about lesbian things, and there's women who come in and say, I'm attracted to women. I don't know if I'm a bisexual or a lesbian. And I think it's like a really important thing to have like that space. Like I've talked about this before, to have like that space. Like it's okay if you don't know, or if you are bisexual and you get a lot of lesbian stuff, like like I think there needs to be space for nuance is what I'm saying. And I think that can only be a good thing. Like someone comes into a therapy situation, coming in with like a bisexual label or a lesbian label or whatever, and things change. Like, obviously, if the therapist only knows about lesbian stuff and nothing to do with bisexuals, this is not like, and even on a very basic level, that like, if you mean bisexuality not in terms of like sexual attraction, but like bisexuality in terms of like historical sexual behavior, again, this is like could be an important thing for a therapist who specializes in lesbians to know about, or to at least differentiate or have an awareness of or something. So like I agree with that, but the way that she terms it, I do not agree with. Oh, hey, Blood Moon. All the guys are here today. Wow, 20 of you. There's not usually that many of you guys for the essays. you guys usually show up for like the soapbox. Okay. I also found that this essay, like the last essay, it throws in like privilege and oppression and like politics. It throws these words out, but it never like cohesively describes like what is the oppression that you're talking about, or like why have you brought up privilege? Like what is the privilege that you haven't, like it's like they're just throwing in buzzwords, and I don't know, just I didn't even finish my undergrad, so I'm not like some kind of an academic. But to me, that seems like a very like lazy fucking writing. Like, be a grown up. What the fuck is that? I don't know. Like, if you have something useful to say, then say that shit. You should need to fill it with fluff. Yeah. So her definition. Hey, Marianne. Her definition of bisexuality is like so freaking vague. It's like a paragraph. Well, I'll just read it now, like for prosperity. Okay. Bisexual women make individual contextual decisions to love and make love with women and men in their lives. They make complex choices within and across different periods of their lives. By definition, Bisexuals defy categorization. I mean, no, they don't, because you're literally describing what the definition of it is. So you're just describing a category. So how is this a defy categorization while you are categorizing it? It makes no sense. Like, again, I'm not like a professor or something, but that's stupid. Okay. Some of them sometimes are contemporaneously bisexual in intimate relationships with both men and women. Like, she literally goes on for like the last like 5 pages or something about like myths about bisexuals and how that's harmful and blah 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 blah. And then in her definition of what a bisexual is, she includes one of the things that she later complains about as like a bad myth about bisexual. Okay. Some of them sometimes are sequentially bisexual in a series of relationships with people of both genders. Others are indefinitely monogamous or sexually involved with a series of people of one gender. They define themselves as bisexual on a theoretical basis. There is no bisexual prototype. That is the center of both their significance and their challenges. No, yes, Maple. That is something that I was going to bring up. That's something else that she said at one point. I'm just going to mention it now because I don't know if I'll see it when I'm scanning through. At one point, she said that bisexual women, they're really good at choosing boyfriends. That they choose boyfriends who are like against sexism or who are not sexist or something stupid like that. And Maple, what you bring up to me is this is why I was thinking about. Maple says, I've been raised by too many homophobic boyfriends to ever say bisexual women have privilege. Now, as has been discussed on my stream before, I think the concept of privilege is like way too dimensional. It doesn't really mean anything. But yes, when she was saying like, bisexuals are so good at picking out men who are not like the evil, it was almost the way she was describing it was almost like bisexuals have such good taste in men. It's like the men they're dating are not even really straight men. So like, you can't like fault them for like being part of the patriarchy because the men they're dating are not even really like straight men because they're so like gentle and not sexist and whatever. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Bisexual women, I mean, okay, she literally starts on the first page being like, we don't have much statistics or data about this. There's not really researchers researching this in like pre-1987 or whatever. So like, fair enough. But we know bisexual women have the highest rates of sexual violence of any sexuality among women. And for her to say that, and just I don't know. I'm with you, Maple. And I mean, obviously, I don't even know like what to say. Obviously, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I wish I had been there so I could cut their dicks off for you. Yeah, Maple says more than half of bisexual women are raped by their male partners. Yeah. Rachel says, yeah, when I thought I was bi, I had a lot of boyfriends who were really threatened by my attraction to women and were then abusive and aggressive in part as a reaction to that. Yes, yes. That's why when she was like, yeah, they all date these like non-sexist men, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, obviously what I know is from like this time period now. It's not, but I actually know a lot of bisexual women who have like trouble, or I don't know that many bisexual women now, but like in conversations with them over the years, it's clear that they're like, I want to date a man or this man or whoever, but because I'm a bisexual, it's like a whole fetishy thing, and like they don't really respect me because of that, and blah 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 blah, and so it becomes like a whole thing for them. So for her to be like, yeah, they have really good taste in men, I was like, what? Like, it's just bullshit. Kaz says, I've been fortunately and unfortunately, only in one relationship with a homophobe, but outside of the relationship, I was treated better by others than when I was with women. Oh, interesting. Oh, then when you were like in a straight relationship, yeah. Yes, exactly. Maple says, men who fetishize bisexual women are extremely sexist. Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking of. Hello, Ali. OMG, Kat Cattinson is in the house. Hello, Kat. Kat says, Benji, I just got here, and I don't know if you've already addressed this, but why do you think the sexual assault rate is higher for bisexual women? Yes, this is a good question. For a couple different reasons. I mean, okay, I'm obviously not a specialist. This is like my opinion. Okay. So, also, like, thank you for being here. It's very flattering. Yeah. So, first of all, as I've said before, when I've made my criticisms of marriage and heterosexuality and heterosexual sex, any woman who enters a sexual relationship, if there's a woman who has never ever been in a sexual setting with a man, and there's a woman who has at least once been in a sexual situation with a man, which one of them statistically is more likely to be hurt? I'm not victim blaming. I just mean like literally because of like, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing I think is what I was kind of talking about with Maple is like this like sexism. I don't even know if sexism is like the right word. It's more like a fetishistic objectification of bisexual women, I think, by men. Um, and I think a part of the fetishistic objectification plays into like female competitiveness. And therefore, like, I think a lot of the time when men sexually abuse women, again, this is all my opinion. I think a lot of the time when men sexually abuse women, they are very like good at how they do it because they'll make sure the woman is like isolated or doesn't have like a support system in that moment so that he will not face any repercussions or he will not lose his control over her. And I think that this whole like the fact that men sexually objectify and fetishize bisexual women creates like kind of competition among other women, and this in part means that they are more isolated when it does happen to them. Yeah, there's something else I was gonna say. Oh, yeah. I think another big part of it is like porn culture. Like at least I'm thinking like contemporarily with like hookup culture and porn culture and all that sex positivity stuff. I think that again it's like a numbers thing. It's like because bisexual women, like I don't know, I'm comparing them to like lesbians, right? Like with lesbians, your dating pool is not that big. It's bisexual women and lesbian women, which is like there are a lot of bisexual women, but when you actually go out to look for dating, it's like, most bisexual women are not really like out there being bisexuals, at least from what I see. But bisexual women, because their dating pool includes all men and like lesbians and bi women, it's just like a numbers thing that I think. I'm not trying to say bisexual people are like sluts or whatever, but I just mean I think like, you know, like you have a more capacity for dating, and so the more people you interact with, the higher chances that you can be abused by those people, right? Than if you only ever had one boyfriend versus somebody who's had 5 boyfriends and 5 girlfriends. The one who's had more relationships, obviously, there's more like chance. Um, I don't know, and I don't know if what I'm saying is like biphobic or whatever, but that's just kind of like what I've observed from talking to women over the years about it. Oh, bye, Rachel. Have fun at work. Um, and yeah, I think it's like a porn thing too. Like, I don't know. I like in porn, the whole concept of like the lesbian who like likes dick. I think a lot of men view bisexual women that way as like, oh, you're into women, but like if I'm like violent and aggressive with you, you'll be into that too because like that's what women like that are like, or something like that's pretty like abstract. My thoughts on that, but I think that like if you look at like the way that bisexuals are treated like 15 years ago by men versus now, I think you can definitely see the huge impact that porn culture has had on the way that the men treat bisexual women, at least like in my opinion. Yes, Kat is saying, I have mostly attracted to men, but still bisexual, and I have had relationships with men who are uncomfortable with that and very controlling. Yeah, that's what Maple was saying before. And who else was saying that? Yeah, a couple different women were saying things along the same lines, yes. Which is why when the author of the essay was like, yeah, bisexuals are really good at choosing like non-sexist men and have great relationships with men, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Let me see what else you guys are saying here. Michelle says, I think the men see bisexual women as a tool to get access to more women. They aren't seen as individual person, and since they're just a tool, they are easily abused. Yeah, I see that too. Like, some of you guys were talking about like the whole unicorn thing. So you have like these women on dating apps basically like hunting down women for one of two reasons. One, to like give their boyfriend the porn experience that he desires. or 2, because they have a shitty boyfriend and want to get away from them, and they have an interest in women, but they haven't like psychologically got to that place of like, I should dump him and be with a woman. And yeah, unicorn hunters. Yeah, I mean, the very fact that this act is a common thing that we all know about shows that these men, it's like you said, they view the bisexual woman as a tool, as like a means to an end, rather than like this is like, rather than viewing it like this is the person I cherish and want to take care of, or whatever you think a healthy romantic relationship is supposed to be like. They view them as, this is someone to have sex with who's going to procure for me more women to have sex with. This is like a conduit to more sexual exploration rather than like a person. Yeah. Yeah. Blood Moon says men also pressure you into threesomes when they know you're bi. It's gross. Yeah, I've heard that too. Okay. We're still on the first page of the essay 26 minutes later. I mean, we're doing better than yesterday when I didn't even get to the article until like an hour into the stream. Okay. Also, I really thought because this book was published in 1987, there wouldn't be gender crap all over it. And literally like on the second page, like here, she's like, what is bisexuality? It's an attraction to genders. Like, shut the fuck up. It is not. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I found offensive as a lesbian, well, okay, first as a lesbian, like I said at the beginning of the stream, I think it is really important for lesbian psychology to have an understanding of bisexuality, like obviously, right? But as a lesbian reading this book, I'm kind of like, this book is meant for lesbians. I mean, look at the title. So like, this stuff I found a little bit offensive here. With few exceptions, 20th century American girls have been raised within the constraints and expectations of social, political, and economic heterosexual culture. Therefore, to choose a bisexual identity, or any identity other than heterosexual, is subversive, and each stepwise thought or action towards a bisexual identity is an act of subversion. What the fuck? That makes no sense. If the premise, right, is that girls are being raised excuse me, girls are being raised in the social, political, and economically heterosexual culture, right? So we are, yes, choose an identity. I haven't even got there, Maple. Okay. If the premise is that we are in this heterosexual culture that is training women to be heterosexual, then like, if the basis is that that is the culture, so to be subversive and do the opposite, then wouldn't being lesbian be the opposite? Like, I'm not saying I think women should like do that. I'm just saying, like, based on her premise, I don't think her conclusion makes any sense. And also, this is a book for lesbians. So I'm a lesbian. I don't even know if you're a lesbian, but imagine, I'm going to read this again. Therefore, to choose a bisexual identity or any identity other than heterosexual, she kind of made a caveat there, but it's like in parentheses, is subversive, and each stepwise thought or action towards a bisexual identity is an act of subversion. Like, reading that as a lesbian, how I read that was, if you are a lesbian, any stepwise action towards bisexuality is subversive. Like, it's not even to me about like giving like a value to sexual orientations as which is more subversive, which is more oppressed, like in this context here. That's not what it's about. But it's like, I don't know, it was so fucking stupid to me. Michelle says also the whole ideology pushing that the only acceptable sexual orientation is poly. I think most porn-soaked and woke men see all women as bi and all able to procure them more masturbatory aids. Yeah, especially the younger woke ones who are like where you guys were talking about while I was reading the essay, like the spicy straights. I think a lot of the younger women now who are spicy straights, or that's what they're like. Subversive to what is the question? Yeah, so how, okay, like the premise makes no sense. Imagine you have a girl who's like in her 20s, and when she was in high school she dated other girls, and in college she dated other girls, and now she's having her first relationship with a man. Well, according to what is postulated here, she is taking a step towards bisexuality, and so now that she has had her first relationship with a man, she is more subversive of heterosexual patriarchy than she was when she was only dating women. Like, it literally makes no sense. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Okay, also then she brings up situational bisexuality. For those of you who don't know, I mean, I've never actually heard the term situational bisexuality, but situational homosexuality is really what she's talking about. She's trying to make the comparison of like, you know, some people go through like phases in their lives and other people like no. And she talks about women in prisons hooking, like that they were straight before they went to prison. Then when they're in prison, they hook up with each other. And then when they leave prison, they go back to being straight. And I'm like, but that doesn't tell you anything about a person who is a bisexual. Like she literally said on like the first page, like, yeah, I'm going to differentiate between bisexual women who are women who identify as bisexual and women who have bisexual sexual activity. She says that on the first page. Then the next page, on the third page, she talks about situational homosexuality, which is a woman who has bisexual sexual activity, but is not herself a bisexual. Like, whoever said that this essay was a mess, I agree. This essay is a mess. Okay. Okay, so she brings up here when she's talking about the experiences of Barbara and Allison that they feel alienated in both heterosexual situations, like communities and lesbian communities. And you know what? Like, true enough, yo. Like, if you feel that way and that's how you feel, like, good, fine. So then later in the book, she kind of explains the Boston Bisexual Women's Network and how it was like validating for women to join that, and you know, to have the freedom of like whether you mention you're dating a man or a woman, nobody's gonna like raise an eyebrow at that. Like that's good for them to be like in this neutral, positive environment, blah blah blah. Like yes, that's good. So do that. Like if everything lesbians have, we built for ourselves, and it's all gone now because reasons. And so this whole idea that like lesbians alienate bisexuals, so we need to like stop having that attitude we have towards our sexual orientation or our political place in society or whatever. Like it's stupid to me that she keeps bringing up like that we're in like a heterosexist and sexist society, but you know who the problem is? The lesbians who alienate the bis. And I'm like, but you're literally like this whole essay seems to be about how bisexuals have unique issues that are separate from lesbians. And I'm like, okay, true. So then shouldn't the conclusion be to advocate for more like bisexual women specific stuff rather than telling the lesbians you need to water down your lesbian shit so that it's the bis don't feel alienated? Like to me that's very stupid. Um but like the way she starts off, right? That even the premise that there are three categories, hetero, bi, and homo, is false. Then it makes sense why she speaks that way. Blood Moon says she doesn't feel alienated by lesbian women. Good. I mean, honestly, I think it depends on a lot of things when bisexuals feel alienated by lesbians. And it's like, at the end of the day, if you feel that way, I'm sad for you because I would like for you to get something out of like female centric spaces and attitudes. But the lesbians need that shit for themselves. They shouldn't like put their needs secondary to like cater to bisexual women, and you know? Yes, I agree, Maple. That would be nice. Maple says, I think there should be bisexual women's exclusive spaces, lesbian exclusive spaces, as well as one of them. Yeah, so you would have like, I could even imagine like one organization having like a lesbian group and a bi group, and then like once every month they have like everybody together meetup thing. Like that would be nice. That sounds nice. Um, Clownworld says there are way more bisexual women than lesbian women. So why is it on lesbians to make spaces for bi women? You know, it just doesn't make sense. Yeah, again, it's like a numbers thing. It doesn't make sense like numbers wise at all. Okay. I guess Kat left. That was nice that she dropped in though. I feel very like visited by because she's like, I mean, before her TikTok was banned, I basically thought she was like a TikTok celebrity. I mean, as far as trans women go, at least. Yes, Kaz, I agree. Kaz is saying, to be honest, no, to be frank, a lot of old bisexual stuff is wokish bullshit. Anything that moves manifesto and saying not to assume that there are only two genders, etc. Yeah, like hey Kat, yeah, like yes, it was strange to me how she was. A lot of what was in the essay was kind of like we need to queer the lines between this and that thing, but this is like pre-queer theory. It reminded me of like throughout the essay there is like a definite tone of I can't conceive of someone who is exclusively attracted to one sex. There was a definite tone of that throughout the essay, and it really reminded me of like the bisexual bullies now, right? With the whole like hearts not parts shit. When did that start? Like 2011 or something. Like that, the entire LGBT institution, right? Like with money and ideology has bought into that 100% at this point, right? Hearts not parts. And this is the earliest reading I have ever done, like published in 1987, where it had. She literally says that at some point in later in in the last third of the essay, she literally says something along the lines of like, we like personalities like not because of their gender, but like regardless of their like this kind of hearts not parts ideas. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm really trying to come at this essay without bringing all of my current discourse, right? I'm trying to take it at face value for what it is in the time period it was written, but it's hard not to see that like this obviously is like what led to that. Anyway, okay. Oh yes, Maple. Maple says the problem with most bisexual spaces is that they're full of men. Yes. Well, in this essay, she constantly is like, "Yup, the heteros are the problem and the lesbians are the problem." And I was like, you know, if you're trying to explain a concept and that's the easiest way to explain it, I'm not like that's fine obviously, but I felt like it was like every single page that she was like the lesbians are just as much of a problem for the bis as the straights. And to me that felt like very disingenuous. That felt like what queer theory does, right? They group together, they do that too, right? Because the monosexuals, they'll group together the homos and the heteros and be like, you have monosexual privilege. And I'm like, but it's forced teaming, and what it does is erase the oppression or struggle of one of the groups, right? So what you're talking about here, the bisexual groups that are both bisexual men and women, it's the same thing to me. Like you're all bisexual, but women and men are different. Like, I mean, I'm a lesbian separatist, so of course this is my perspective, but like women and men are different, and it's like the same thing. You're like erasing the differences between them because you're like, oh, they're all just bisexuals. Like the differences don't matter. But like considering more than half of bisexual women have been assaulted by their partners, like bisexual women have very, very high rates of domestic violence from men. Like to me, that seems like a group in which obviously a lot of bisexual women would appreciate a female-only bisexual space. Yeah. Kat says, at what point do you think TRAs began co-opting the work of feminists like Shuster? I don't even know if it was like, I think a lot of people think of it as like, like in 19, when did, okay. Gender Trouble came out in 1987. This came out in 1989. This came out in 1987. So, oh, it says 1990, but then the other thing says, well, whatever. Okay, very close. The way a lot of people seem to think of it is that like queer theorists just like sat down one day. I'm not saying this about you specifically, but the queer theorists like kind of sat down one day and were like, let's look at like the second wave stuff and see what we can steal. I don't think that's how it happened. I think it was more like even in this essay they bring up the concept of the lesbian bisexual, right? And that's a thing that the which here they define as a bisexual who's only dating other women at the time that she's using that label. I think it's more like it slowly evolved. So I don't even know if there's like a way you can like put a date on it, because like, but that was all in the 90s already. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, Kat, but I think it was like the late 80s, really, because and I think it was more like in academia, so like the general people were not paying attention to it, right? Like this is kind of academic, like not specifically, but it's mostly meant for like a psychologist, not like a lay person, as far as I can tell. And I think like, okay, so like for our generation, like, well, whatever, Kat and I think we're similar age. We've seen like a huge evolution of queer theory on Tumblr, right? Like literally, like terminology has been invented on Tumblr, which is now being like published by Stonewall, you know? Like we saw that happen. That's not like a new crazy thing. That has always been that way. It just wasn't Tumblr. Like if you look at like a lot of feminist zines and feminist quarterlies and feminist magazines and feminist newsletters and lesbian newsletters and all that shit from like, you know, pre 2000s, it's like it's literally just like a bunch of random women writing down their thoughts, and it's like the same kind of thing. I've read, I can't remember the name, but I've read like a lesbian magazine. I think it was out of California from the 80s. I read this one article in it that somebody sent me, and it was like, it was this kind of postulating of like, you know, bisexuality is more subversive, and like this is why my relationship with a man is like more subversive than your lesbian relationships and all this stuff. So I think, and it's like, because what was that newsletter at the time? It was like a couple of random women writing down what they think. So it's not like there was like an editorial process or something. It was like the same thing as what Tumblr is, random people writing down random shit, and then other people reading it and being like, yeah, I think that's true, I'm gonna write my own opinions on that. And so I think a lot of it like evolved organically that way. Yeah, exactly. Kat says it's all good. Sexuality is a continuum. Really reminds me of the gender spectrum and non-binary. It's amazing that that came back. That came out back in the late 80s. Well, actually, what year is I think that this might be like a play on the lesbian continuum. What year? I think it's also the late 80s, right? Uh, okay. The essay Compulsory Heterosexuality by Adrienne Rich is the earliest thing that I've read. So by no means is it like a categorical statement that this is when it started. But it's the earliest thing I've read where the idea of a sexual continuum is presented. But it's not so much a sexual continuum as like a continuum of my life is woman oriented, and it's a matter of to what degree, like emotionally, psychologically, sexually. Anyway, so that was in the 80s. I feel like this is supposed to be a play on that, especially because she brings up heterosexuality at least once, I guess, like paying homage. But back then it was more, I don't know. I feel like the concept of a continuum now is like, I'm not sure how to articulate this, but it feels very different to me when you read like the way they explain what a continuum is. Um, it feels like they're trying to give themselves like wiggle room to think outside of something. And when the NBs and the queers use the concept of a continuum or spectrum, it seems like they're trying to like back you into a corner with your thinking, if that makes sense. I don't have like a very fully formed view on this, but so thank you for bringing that up, Kat. I want to think about that more. Okay, let's keep going with the essay. So, like, so many of the phrases in this essay are stupid. Listen to this phrase. So, a bisexual's experience is one of nonconformity, a personal choice to act against heterosexist cultural constraints. If it's a choice, then can't you choose to conform? So then why are you calling it a nonconform? Like, it's just, I don't know. A lot of the phrases don't make any sense. Okay. Something else she brought up from that 1984 poll of the Boston Bisexual Women's Network is that nearly half were under the age of 30 and 99% were under the age of 40. So, yeah, I know, Maple. I know. I'm sure as a bisexual you find that disturbing. So, this is what we see also now, right? And I'm trying to understand what's the same. Because I think, at least in my observation of things, there's way more like women under the age of 35, whatever, calling themselves bisexuals than like women older than that, right? And you know, if you hang out with lesbians, they're like, well, yeah, when the women are young, they want to sleep with women, but then when they get a bit older, they just want to like get married to a man and settle down and do all that kind of stuff that you're like women are supposed to do. Um, and I mean, I don't know, I was talking about this actually a few weeks ago on here, that I never go on Facebook. I went on Facebook for the first time in months a few weeks ago, and I looked up all the names of the kids who were in the Gay Straight Alliance with me at high school. And the girl I handed off, I was like oh yeah, we called it like the captain. I was like the captain of the Gay Straight Alliance for 2 years. And when I handed it off to the next girl, she was like an asexual lesbian at the time. Also, she was young. She was like 14 or 15. And I was like, she's like figuring her shit out. Anyway, she settled down with a man. This other girl who was like a pan poly type, who was, I really, really thought she was like a lesbian. Even at that time when I didn't like know fuck all about lesbians and never really hung out or knew lesbians, I really, really thought that she was like, she loves anime type girls, you know, who's like really into cosplay and stuff. I really, really thought she was a lesbian. She's also like, when I saw her pictures, like, I don't want to be misogynistic, but it's just so obvious to me. Like when we were younger, me and her, we would go to like anime stuff and whatever. And the way she dressed herself was like for comfort or like as a character, right? Now I've found her social media, and like every single one of her pictures, she looks like, you know, Kim Kardashian level of dressed up and put together, and like, I don't know. And I'm not even that old. Like these people, these women that I knew who I thought were like lesbian or bi when I was a teenager, it's like the year after they got out of university, they all like settled down and moved in with boyfriends. Um, so I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think much has changed on that front. Ugh, Clown World, don't even start me on polyles. Although I'm 100% sure it's going to come up in this. Because remember in the introduction, I don't know how many of you guys listened to the introduction. What is polyles, political lesbian? It's like a couple different definitions of what a political lesbian is. But basically, it's a woman who decides that she wants to be a lesbian based on politics. No, Mad Adam, it's not gay until graduation. It's lesbian until graduation. Lug, L-U-G, lugs. The older lesbians I know who went to college in like the 90s and the 80s, they were like, yeah, there was tons of lugs. Like we would like, you know, hook up while we were in college, and then like a few years later they get married to men. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Right. Okay. So this is what I'm. But like again, she's contradicting herself here. Public bisexuals endure much of the same oppression as their lesbian friends and lovers, often losing jobs, family, friends, and emotional security. Okay, that part true enough. I have no contention with that. In the 80s in the US, of course, women were losing their jobs and stuff because of being bisexuals. Okay. Their experiences echo lesbian experiences of coming out. They are misunderstood and mistreated because they break cultural rules about intimacy, sex, and gender. The core of bisexual women's oppression is lesbian oppression. Like, okay. Obviously, bisexuals have homosexuality. Like, they are not homosexuals, but they have homosexuality, yeah? Oh no, my point with this was to compare it to her own fucking words 2 pages ago. Her own words 2 pages ago. Anything you do to become more bisexual makes you more subversive. Then here she's like, yeah, we're all the same. Just, yeah, makes no sense. Okay. More woke crap, says Maple. Very, very much agree. Kaz, more woke conversion therapy. Very. Oh yeah. Oh, the split attraction model. Yeah. What bicycle thing, Maple? Okay, the next section, coming out as bisexual. Oh yeah, no, but also, okay, I think this is also bisexual erasure, where she's like, yeah, the experience of coming out as bi is the same as coming out as a lesbian. Because, like, obviously it's not, first of all. Like, when you think about contemporary discourse about bisexuality, a lot of their issue is that, like, when I'm dating a man, I'm invisible. So, like, how is that a similarity between lesbians and bisexuals? Obviously, lesbians don't have that problem of being, like, invisible because who they date makes it look like they're straight. Um, and yeah, like, it's again, Mabel says she finds it offensive. Yeah, like, this essay seems to be about how bisexuals have their own unique struggles, and I'm like, yes, that is true. I'm on top of that. Yes. Then she's like, no, it's all the same. To me, you are, like, erasing the complexity of the uniqueness of bisexuals' experiences by just saying it's the same as lesbians. And you're also being lesbophobic, because I think at the same time, you must not really have a super deep understanding of lesbian experience if you're like, yeah, it's the same. Mabel says bisexual, like the idea that bisexuals come from being same-sex attracted at sometimes to opposite attraction. Oh yeah, that you can, like, flip back and forth. Yeah. But isn't that a little bit of, I don't keep track of these things, Maple. Isn't that a bit of an outdated concept at this point? Like, what, didn't that become a thing at the same time that Otherkin and all that shit happened? Wasn't it like because I remember when it was like, oh yeah, like, my pronouns on Tuesday are he, him, and then my pronouns from, like, Wednesday to Friday are, like, they, them, and then my pronouns on Sunday are, like, she, her. And it was like at that time that I was seeing, that was when I was seeing, like, yeah, like, like, in the winter I'm more attracted to men, and in the summer I'm more attracted to women because, like, the sun and the moon or some shit. Like, am I wrong, or is that, like, a little bit not so common anymore? Yeah, disgusting. Okay, I'm very sorry, Maple. That's disturbing. All right. Also, I love how. Oh, okay, bye, cat. um, I love how she ends in the conclusion section. She's like, "Yep, here's all the things we learned. We learned about, like, sexual development. The whole sexual development section is like 2 paragraphs about how this one woman, like, humped this other girl at summer camp. Like, what? I don't feel like I learned a lot about bisexual sexual development, to be honest with you. Um, or, like, if anything, I feel like we learned about identity development, because what she does talk about for, like, several pages is, like, I mostly had sex with men, and this is a situation where I finally was like, oh, maybe I should have sex with women, or I could have sex with women. Like, that to me is not so much it to me, the way the context and tone she uses is more about this. I'm going to use this label now because this is where I've gotten to psychologically with regards to my sexuality, rather than, like, this is the development of my sexual feelings, if that makes sense. I feel like she was, like, calling it sexual development, but it was more like identity label development, if that makes sense. Um, but I mean, also, there's straight women here. I mean, maybe not now, but sometimes. Okay. It's been an hour. It's 4. Yes, Blood Moon, that's definitely how it works based on science. Kaz says, I played Pokemon Sun and it made me asexual, but then when I played Sword, I became bi again. All right. Oh, you want to see what my shirt says? I've definitely worn this on my YouTube channel before. All right. I'm not one of those lesbians who knows anything about astrology. I'm an Aries. That's all I know. Okay. I don't know. I find it odd that in this section of the essay, she is simultaneously criticizing lesbians for alienating bisexuals, but also in this section, she describes how one of the bisexuals, like I think Barbara, Barbara moved into a feminist household. So like usually it's like a big house with a lot of rooms, and there's like 6 women or whatever who are like roommates, but it's like an intentional like co-op type thing. She moved into a feminist household full of lesbians, and that's when she was able to like explore her sexual feelings and be comfortable and have like openness to have sexual relationship with a woman. So it's like literally she keeps bringing up how like lesbians have helped and then being like, but the lesbians are mean. Um this is the first time in my life, that I this is the first time in my life that I've read the term bisexual lesbian in like an actual publication that is not Tumblr or Twitter or something. So um but she doesn't call herself a lesbian bisexual. She calls herself a bisexual lesbian. So I'm just thinking like language wise, she's using bisexual as an adjective and lesbian as a noun. That's less great actually than if she had used lesbian bisexual, I guess. But I think the fact that it starts with the word bisexual, I don't know, at least to me, in this context, if somebody came up to me and told me I'm a bisexual lesbian, and to me, that means I know I'm a bisexual. It's a fem. I know I'm bisexual, but I only want to date women. Here she defines it as I'm bisexual and I'm acknowledging my bisexuality, but I'm making it clear I only date women. So it's literally just a fem. Um, I don't know. I find that interesting. And I honestly I thought that if I ever came across this word, I would find it like very like viscerally offensive. But honestly, the way she describes it as like I want to settle down with a woman and date a woman, even though I know I'm bisexual. To me, it's like if you're acknowledging that you're a bisexual and you're not appropriating lesbianism, that's okay. Like even this book being called Lesbian Psychologies, what they mean when they say lesbian, they just mean women attracted to women. It doesn't necessarily mean exclusively homosexual. Um, no, it is an oxymoron, but it's literally just like their way of, because to them lesbian didn't necessarily mean exclusively homosexual. I mean, apparently, according to many of the essays and the introduction in this book. So yeah, Mary Jane, exactly. Um, well, that's why FemFem came up, and I think that's a great thing, and I support the FemFems very much. Well, this is not the first book I've read where this is implied. What year was that other book published? I've read several books from the 70s that that exactly, Maple. This is what I'm trying to say very badly. Maple says, personally, I'm willing to forgive women saying bisexual lesbian to mean fem if she's just doing her best to describe the fem experience without having the language. Yeah, like basically that's what I'm trying to say. Um, yeah. Okay. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But I'm like, I support women. Like in the Marilyn Fry book, she talks about how like power starts with the ability to say no, right? So if any woman is like categorically saying no to all men, regardless of her sexuality, and not necessarily because she's into women now, I support that. So Ali says, I meet various women who say they are lesbian, but then I discover that they wouldn't kick a man who dresses as a woman out of bed, and I have issues with that, I believe. Oh, no, yes, yes. I very rarely meet lesbians that I have not intentionally sought out through political pathways, right? So basically, like all the lesbians I know in my life, I have found them through radical feminist spaces online and stuff like that, right? But when I do meet lesbians outside that context, this like literally I met this woman who was like the sister of one of my best friends. I was like staying at her house and stuff. And her sister was like, "Yeah, I'm a lesbian." And I was like, "Okay." And like I was there for several weeks, so we hung out a bit. And then she was talking about like, yeah, this guy she was hooking up with for a while, and I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, like I'm a lesbian, but like I make exceptions. Like if the guy is like really pretty or if he's like really gentle, like I'm very like particular about it, but like sometimes, like a handful of times in my life I made exceptions." And I'm like, "So you're not a lesbian then? You're bi." Like I didn't say that because I didn't want to like get into anything, but I was like, "You're literally not a lesbian then." So to me, the reason that I'm like, I didn't find the way that this woman used the term bisexual lesbian offensive is because she is acknowledging that she's a bisexual. To me, that's like the number one thing with these freaking. It's like, to me, the offensive part is not really like your dating pattern or even the actual label you're using. It's when you imply that what you're doing as a bisexual is the same thing as what lesbians do. That's the offensive part to me. So, Michelle says, I have a lot of patience for good faith attempts to at communication. I have absolutely no time for this other BS. Maple says she's a Kinsey 5. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought when she described it to me. I was like, okay, sexuality is a choice. Yo. Like, just the first phrase. I was like, are you serious right now? The first phrase. At this moment in human sexual history, the presence of bisexuals conspicuously reopens the issue of sexual choice. Like, okay, not to deny agency or whatever the fuck, but isn't it kind of like biphobic to be like at one point in the essay, she was like, bisexuals are unique because in all of their relationships with men and women, there is a potentiality for like sexual relationships, which first of all completely dismisses what the sexuality of the other people involved are, because most people are straight, so most of the time that's not an option, obviously, from the other person's perspective. But this idea that like it's all a choice, everything is a choice, like you just chose to do this and that, the other thing, like it plays into one of the myths that she's criticizing, which is like like the slutty bisexual thing. Like, I don't know. It really rubs me the wrong way. I do not like it. Yeah. Okay. Underlying any bisexual identity is an assumption that all sexuality can be chosen apart from cultural or countercultural expectations. the more spontaneous, and this is like very like hookup culture mentality, like porn culture mentality. The more spontaneous and contextual a woman's choices are, the more free she is from socially imposed and internalized limitations. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, just because, I mean, every time anyone has a sexual interaction, there's choice involved. Like, I'm attracted to this person and I'm choosing to act on that, right? What she's describing to me is basically that because bisexuals have more options, that when they enact a choice, it's more meaningful than when, you know, a straight couple is attracted to each other and they decide to have a sexual relationship. That it's more meaningful because you had more choices. So your choice, it has more weight than somebody who has less options. Like that to me is kind of what she's saying, and I'm like it's kind of stupid to me. Um, yeah. Okay, this is the part where she was like, bisexuality isn't just like an openness to like sexual relationships with both sexes, it's also like an openness to like emotional intimacy or whatever. Listen to this. Many bisexuals believe that, given the flexibility of sexual choices, even the vision of a continuum falls short of the possible. Sexual identities can become an acknowledgement of one's lifetime's lovers, rather than an inflexible dictation to select some particular proposition of relationship with women or men. Okay, first of all, this is a book for lesbians, right? Let's keep in mind how you feel as a lesbian listening to this part. Sexual identities can become an acknowledgement of one's lifetime's loves, rather than an inflexible dictation to select some particular proposition of relationships with women or men. Like, she's making it sound like lesbians are being forced to date other women and like they don't have any options. Like, that's a bad thing. And I'm like, on in the level that she's talking here, I think lesbians have as many choices as bisexuals do, because it's like the choice whether or not to act on your attractions. You can't control who you're attracted to, but you can control how you act about it. And so in that sense, bisexuals and all of the sexual orientations are in the same boat, right? Um, Also, the sexual identities can become an acknowledgement of one's lifetime's loves. So isn't that kind of like a anti-gold star lesbian discourse these days, you know? Like to me, and I know I'm projecting my like contemporary discourse onto this, but or not mine, but like my observation of it. Isn't that kind of saying that like if a lesbian, like had sex with a man once in high school and then now she's like married to a woman, that like the tone to me is saying like, well, you should call yourself a bisexual because otherwise you're lying about your sexual history. Yeah, Clownworld says sexual history definitely does not equal actual sexual orientation in all cases. Yes, I very much agree. And it's also the contrast between this and the last essay is very interesting because she was saying like kind of the opposite, right? That like lesbians can call themselves lesbians even if they've only ever slept with men and then they realized I'm only attracted to women, or whether they've like never slept with anyone, that like regardless of your sexual history, you could have like an understanding of who you are. This woman is saying like your understanding of who you are is irrelevant because your sexual history matters more. At least that's how I read this part of the essay, and I don't like that at all. And to me it like lacks. I don't expect all the women in this book to be second wave, but this essay really lacks feminist analysis. Um, because, like, even the concept that because a woman has had sex with a man at least one time, she cannot call herself a lesbian. or should call herself a bisexual, or is obligated to inform people of that, like, gives men so much power. Like, do they need that? Okay. Oh yeah, listen to this. This is the Hearts Not Parts. Are you ready? As gender roles dissolve, I think it's kind of weird how she's like looking into the future and like predicting the future. Individuals can begin to love and make love with particular human beings rather than a woman or a man. Literally hearts not parts. Like, be into the person, not their genitals. Because, like, again, you listen to this in the mindset that you're a lesbian. As heterosexism and sexism dissipate, the assumption here is that they both will. Sexual preference will become unimportant. So if there was no sexism, lesbians would suddenly be attracted to men? Or without patriarchy and political power structures which pressure us in one direction, without being pressured into one direction, then it would be making any decision would be all on the same level. I'm like, it just doesn't make much sense to me. Yes, Michelle, I'm pretty sure if I ever entered a sexual situation with a man, I'd be nauseated and bored at the same time. Can you be more explicit, Michelle? What is this roadblock you're specifying? Cave monster, that's pretty accurate. I don't know, I'm hoping that this is like only the first 5 essays about identity are like this. I might not read the whole book, like or I might not read the whole book on YouTube at least. If we get like halfway through the book and all of the essays are woke, then maybe I'll stop, but. Okay. New visions for closeness. Which also, like, this paragraph explains how this woman has like emotional intimacy with like a bunch of different people, even if they're not having sex. And then the new vision for closeness section comes. It's a bit weird. I feel like that should be in this section, but whatever. Like I said, the essay is a bit of a mess. Oh yeah. 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 Okay, this is the. Okay, but Michelle. Yeah. To me, though, the difference between a bisexual insisting that she is a lesbian or the same as a lesbian is that it sends a very clear message to society that if a woman calls herself a lesbian, there is a potentiality for heterosexual sex. If a lesbian woman is calling herself a bisexual, this is not having the same effect on the bisexual community, sending the message that there are bisexuals who do things that are counter to what bisexuality is, right? Like, to me, it's not the same because yeah. But, yeah, so Michelle is asking, did this enable the spicy head entitlement? Yes, that is a very good point, Michelle. I haven't thought of it that way. Yeah, so Michelle says, absolutely, I agree. I was wondering if this was a thin edge of the wedge. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for bringing that up, Michelle. Grey Witch says, like, why a lot of TIFs want to be straight men. This world tries to make you hate yourself. Yeah. No, okay. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing that up. Okay. Okay, are you ready to be more offended? Because bisexuals consider all people potential friends and lovers, they break down cultural rigidities about sexual and emotional closeness. Bisexuals seek closeness without concession to the constructed obstacles of socialization. They can become close to any person along a fluid line of acquaintance to intimacy. From acquaintance to intimacy, deciding whether sex will be a part of the relationship or not. Bisexual relationships can spontaneously shift along the line of affection, having distinctions between closeness and sex, and unintentionally or intentionally creating new forms of relationships. Often, bisexuals define themselves as much by their constellation of committed relationships as by their sexual relationships. So again, she is like completely she is completely conflating polyamory and bisexuality. They're indistinguishable to her. And not even just polyamory. Isn't there like there is like a woke person term. I can't remember what it is, but I used to use it for myself. I can't remember what it is. I'm trying to look at this like but it's part of the whole split attraction model that you can have like a very emotionally and like psychologically intimate relationship with someone without having sex, and there's like a whole community of people who are into that kind of thing. It's like on the ace somewhere between ace and poly crap. um but she is basically saying that all bisexuals fall into this category, um and it's very fucking stupid. Also, again, it's kind of like hookup culture mentality. Why does this essay exist? Yeah, this kind of hookup culture mentality. Bisexual relationships can spontaneously shift along the line of affection, having distinctions between closeness and sex, and unintentionally or intentionally creating new forms of relationships. Like this, I don't know if this is like a bad faith interpretation of what she's saying, but to me, this is kind of like the like lesbian predator thing almost. Like gives me vibes like that. Is like, oh, you think that you're just like friends with a bisexual, like at any moment they might decide like they want to have sex with you or something. Like it's a very like, I don't know, stupid, very stupid. Okay. Oh yeah, then Allison goes all on, that's all intimacy. At the end of the day, there's sexuality. What's going on is that there are people in my life, and sexuality isn't the highest thing. Like this, like arrogance. Okay. I mean, also what I find strange is, so this essay, a lot of it is about how bisexuals are unique from lesbians, which is like, good for you. But then in this section where she talks about like the self-made family and how they have different types of relationships, like they have a co-parenting relationship and like lifelong very good friends and all this, she's talking about how it's like an exclusively bisexual experience. And I'm like, but lesbians and gay men to some extent also do that, like this kind of like found family, or like, having like very long-term committed relationships with people outside of like the blood or legal family. um yeah, me too. Like my roommates are like my family. They're basically like my siblings. Okay. Bisexuality and women's liberation. Like this section, it's like one page. This section, I think, almost is like disagreeing with the fundamental aspect of what feminism is. Because listen to this. Allison says, people are people. That's probably my highest reality in terms of my politics. No matter what color you are, you're people. No matter what gender you are, you're people. That's like, what is that? Is that, what's the name of that movement? Egalitarianism? Equality, humanism? There's some name for that movement where it's like, it's not like men's rights activism and it's not feminism, but it's like, people are people and like all the people matter. Like, she's like, yeah, this is like what the feminism is that the egalitarians, thank you. So this is like the feminism that the bisexuals are doing. They don't care about, they're all egalitarians. And somehow that's like a more elevated form. Like I said, this essay has like no feminist analysis in it, which is like, that's fine, obviously. But for her to then have like a section on women's liberation where she clearly doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Yes, Maple says it sounds like colorblind. I don't see sex, I don't see race. Stuff that enables racism and sexism. Yes, very, very agree. Okay. Yeah, Mad Adam is the same for me. Like I do like Christmas dinner and my birthdays and stuff with my roommates, not with like my family. Okay. I find it so strange that she brought this up. In relationships with men, they grapple with heterosexism, their anti-male feelings, and sexism, both external and internalized. Like, if you are a bisexual who has anti-male feelings, what is even the point of attempting an intimate relationship? Like, obviously you can like do sexual activity with anyone, right? But like emotional and psychological intimacy, if you truly have like anti-male feelings, like why are you even trying to do that? Like, it makes no sense to me. It's like kind of stupid. Michelle says this woman is just tossing out as much as possible to see if something sticks. Yeah, that's how this essay feels. Julie's asking me my birthday is I don't want to give an exact date, but it's like usually around Easter. Yeah, my roommates and I, we try to do like board games and movies on Sunday nights and stuff like that. And we'll go like on road trips and go camping together and stuff like that. Like we went on like a little mini like 3-day road trip at New Year's together. I'm glad you have that. Are we all Aries? Yes, I agree, Maple. I didn't even think about it that way because I keep thinking of this book is for lesbians. But like, as she talks about and as we know, a lot of women who are trying to come to terms with their bisexuality research lesbianism at some point, consider it, right? Yes. So yes, Maple says basically any young confused bisexual girl reading this essay is going to be thrown to the fucking wolves. Yes. Kaz, can you recommend me any of this literature, please? So we're like a smorgasbord of astrology. Noise. Okay. Also this, like it's this yes. I mean, I'm kind of like beating a dead horse, but this like kind of Oh, hey, Tallstones. You're a Pisces. So this whole like egalitarian thing here. Okay, so for those of you who weren't here, at this time period in feminism, when the term woman identified meant like you're like psychologically and like intellectually, your mentality is towards centering women and prioritizing women and thinking from the woman's perspective or the woman's needs, right? Whereas male identified meant the same thing, but like basically everyone is male identified in a patriarchal society, and then you can like consciousness raise and like deconstruct your socialization and become women identified or female identified. That's what it means in this context. Okay, so I'm going to read this phrase now. Well, it starts with thus. I guess I should go back one page, sentence. Okay, here. They select relationships with particular people, conscious of, but often not deferring, to the resulting societal costs and benefits, envisioning that as sexism and heterosexism fade, such choices will become personal preference without political underpinnings. Thus, bisexuals aim to stretch past man-identified, past woman-identified, to a new capacity to self-identify, to define themselves by themselves. So she's advocating for some kind of like hyper-egalitarian thing. Like to me, this shows a fundamental lack of understanding of what the concept of patriarchy was in the 80s by this author. And also like also just like this kind of like this is something I kind of mentioned like about half an hour ago. This tone that like bisexuals have like this enlightenment that nobody else has. Like that's definitely what she's talking about here. And like I'm sure that there is like feminist perspectives or concepts that bisexuals have a better understanding of than anyone else because they're different than straight women or lesbians, right? I'm sure that there are some. I'm open to hearing about what those are, but clearly this is not it. Like, Blood Moon says men have strong anti-female feelings, but they still have sex with them. Yeah, but when men have sex with women and they have anti-female feelings, it's like the sex is like the embodiment of their like hatred of the women. I don't think it's the same. I think that women, we have sex like in a completely different way. Yeah. No, Blood Moon. Of course, you can have anti-male feelings, and still be attracted to men. But to me, it's like if you know that that's where you're at, then attempting to like have a relationship with a man to me seems kind of like pointless. Tostone says she is not addressing women with disabilities or women with children and how this affects our relationships and choices we make. Yes, I find that strange too. Like, I do find this essay is somehow all over the place and yet extremely myopic at the same time. The special gift this author has. All right. Okay, I'm sick of this section. I didn't even get to the end, but I'm sick of it. Next section, Between Both Worlds. Here, this is where she talks about like the bisexual myths and how they're bad, and yet she is like promulgating them at the same time. Bisexual women are mavericks within both heterosexual and lesbian communities. Bisexuals struggle to defy myths of their self-delusion, promiscuity, and indecisiveness, myths that arise amid widespread confusion about sexuality and closeness. Both of the myths that she brings up, yeah, Maple, she's done nothing but perpetuate bisexual myths. Both of the So she brings up two different examples here. She brings up the example that, you know, like in further reading from what I just said, like there are different paragraphs. One of the paragraphs here talks about, you know, that they can't be monogamous and that they like need to have lots of sex and they're promiscuous. But literally the person who's talking about that is Allison, who, like, as far as the description of the essay goes, was being like dating multiple people at the same time or sleeping with multiple people at the same time. So then that brings up the myth of bisexuality can be like a transitory period between accepting your sexual orientation. And it's like, okay, so maybe for Michelle or maybe for Barbara, it wasn't a transitory period, but it is for a lot of people. So it's not really a myth then, is it? Like, I can see how it's like a concept that can be problematic for bisexuals, but that doesn't mean that it's not a real thing. There's tons and tons of lesbians like in here who were like, yeah, I was bi for like a year or 5 years or whatever, and then I realized I came out as lesbian after. So it might be like an issue for bisexuals, but it's not false that it is like a transitory period for a lot of people. Like, listen to this phrase here. Like others, bisexuals choose to act on some of their sexual attractions. No evidence exists that bisexuals have any more or less sex than anyone else, nor that they require simultaneous female and male lovers for sexual satisfaction. But you literally said, because bisexuals consider all people potential friends and lovers, they break down cultural rigidity about sexual and emotional closeness. Bisexuals seek closeness without concession to the constructs and obstacles of socialization. They become close to, whatever, where's the thing? They can become close to any person along a fluid line from acquaintance to intimacy, deciding whether sex will be a part of the relationship or not. Then this. I don't even know. I don't even want to read it again. But she's contradicting herself like a page after she said the other thing. Oh my god, how many more pages is there? Oh my god. Okay, I'm going to start like skipping a lot of shit because this is getting annoying. Okay, then there's this whole section. Are we still in the same section? This between both worlds. Yeah. Heterosexuals and lesbians often fear bisexuals' presumed relationship shifts and non-monogamy. First, members of this culture operate on a scarcity mentality about closeness and sex. A scarcity mentality? Like, what is she talking about? Is she being like... It's kind of like an MRA perspective, isn't it? Basically that, like, if I am dating a woman, she only has a limited amount of sex that she can have and I'm owed all of it. Is that what she's trying to say? Is that this scarcity mentality? Like, is that what... I don't understand what the fuck she's saying. But, the reason I brought this up was this whole, like, heterosexuals and lesbians, they have the same problems with bisexuals, and they are like the same power structure against bisexuals. So, do you think a heterosexual man who is dating a bisexual woman, that his fears of presumed relationship shifts and non-monogamy are the same as a bisexual who's dating a lesbian who's dating a bisexual? Because, like, in general, as you guys have said, and as I know, when a bisexual woman is dating a man, if she was to go out and hook up with a woman, he would be like, or leave him for a woman, he would be like hurt, and if she left him, and he would be like probably thinking it's hot and doesn't count that she had sex with a woman, right? Whereas a lesbian dating a bisexual woman, if the bisexual woman left her for a man, I mean, that's like a very valid fear to have. It's not like some kind of a phobia. Like, that's like based on real things. Or like if a lesbian is dating a bisexual woman and the bisexual woman has sex with a man, then it's like this whole thing of like, you know, is that like the real sex, and lesbian sex isn't the real sex, and like, you know, what you did with him is more legitimate than you did. Like, to me, it's like completely distinct and has no relation to each other whatsoever. Yeah, exactly. Michelle is like, yeah, I ask all the bi women I date to find another lesbian to have a threesome with. It's quite clear how different we are from men. Yeah, exactly. Okay. This is like the origin of the monosexual thing, because here she says, both heterosexuals and lesbians rely on arguments that sexual preference is involuntary and immutable, even biologically determined. And so this is like mean to the bis, basically, and that's like a problem. Yeah, exactly, Michelle. Michelle says, consider how often lesbians fear we won't be good enough or satisfy women who are used to sex with the almighty peen. Yeah, exactly. It's like completely that compared to like a situation like I know there's so many women on dating apps who are like, yeah, I have a boyfriend, but I'm allowed to go have sex with women because that doesn't count because it's a woman. Bisexuals often describe themselves as outsiders in lesbian communities, misunderstood for their identity, and afraid of lesbians' rejection. Why are you afraid of rejection? Get therapy. People are going to reject you. You need to get over yourself. As lesbian culture has gained a set of distinct norms, the status of bisexual women as members or non-members has surfaced as a key issue. So this whole paragraph basically is about how there's now like, because there's like at this point in the 80s, there's like a cohesive lesbian community. It's very clear like who is and isn't in the community, and that the bis are being excluded, and that's very mean. As lesbian rights are won, however, the rules for membership can begin to relax. Again, she's kind of being like, this is what I hope happens in the future. Welcome from lesbian community need no longer depend on any particular identifying characteristic or even promises of women lovers only. What does that even fucking mean? What does that even mean? Is she trying to say that once lesbians have like all the rights they need, that somehow like if a straight woman wants to join the lesbian community, like that the lesbians should validate her because like, oh, it's like she was saying before, right? That like once we are like out of the heterosexist culture, that any sexual relationship choice would have like zero political implications. Like it's just so fucking stupid. Yeah, Ali. I mean, when it comes to that, like obviously it's like an insecurity, so it's not like you can logic yourself out of it, but like literally when it comes to that, it's like ask the women, like when you have sex with men, how many orgasms do you have? When you have sex with women, how many orgasms do you have? There you go. Nothing to be threatened by, is it? Okay. I don't drink. I don't like loud music. I would love cafes though. Love cafes, like lesbian cafe. Like a cafe bookstore type thing that has like workshops and stuff. Would fucking love that. Yeah. Okay, here we go on to the straight passing privilege section. Many lesbians blame bisexual women for their supposed ability to pass as heterosexual. We don't blame them, we just notice it. Indeed, bisexuals can take advantage of quote unquote heterosexual privilege when they are presumed to be heterosexual or when they choose visible choose visible relationships with men and the associated benefits. Like, you're literally saying that they have a choice. So even if we can all agree that the concept of privilege is very two-dimensional, like, if you're saying they have a choice, then you're already conceding that they have a thing that lesbians don't have. So it's not like blaming them. Benji, would you go back to school to take business? Maybe you could avoid the cultists in that field. I don't want to go back to school, man. I fucking hate university. Like, I had I literally developed like a digestive issue while I was in university, and I'm pretty sure it was just from stress. Like, I developed agoraphobia in university. Like, my anxiety was the worst it's ever been in my life, even though I was away from my abusers. Like, it literally was not a good thing for me. I don't know. I thought about going back to school for a couple different things. Like, I thought being an investigative journalist would be cool and cover like feminist stuff, or to be like a therapist who can like specialize in lesbians or stuff like that. But like, honestly, I don't want to spend like years and years in school racking up debt and stuff. Like, I'm so done with that crap. But I'm very flattered. Like, people have told me, a couple different lesbian lawyers I know were trying to encourage me to go to law school. And I'm like very flattered because I like to talk about law. I'm very flattered that they thought I could be a lawyer, but I'm not built for that shit, man. That's another thing, is like the way, like, I have ADHD. The way that the education is structured is very like counterintuitive to me. Like, that's why I like music, because it's like hands-on. It's like experience, right? It's not like sitting and reading a book and then writing an exam about it. I'm very bad at that. I'm really good at like writing like essays and articles, and like, this is like my opinions and my thoughts, and like, this is how these things relate to each other. I'm very bad at like memorizing dates and times and like names and like all that kind of shit. Like, I'm really not built for like standardized education, really, if you get what I'm saying. I'm very bad at like exam taking and stuff like that. I would love to have a women's bookstore. I would fucking die to have a women's bookstore. I should just start a GoFundMe. I need like $2 million so I can buy like a building in Toronto to open a women's bookstore. Maple says there's no physical reason why men should be such bad lovers, they just don't give a shit. I think that's mostly true, but also I do think that there's like, with like gay men or lesbians, I think it's like, if you have the same body, then obviously you will like, yeah, then security, yeah. I don't know. Honestly, if I was going to open, I've had some online businesses before. I won't tell you what they are because obviously for security reasons, but I made like a couple $1,000s with each of them, but then the first one I reinvested every single cent I made. So like, I didn't really make any money, but into my next business. But I have like some basic business experience, and if I want to learn about something, I'm very good at like sitting down and researching it. Or finding somebody who knows about that. Like, I think if I was going to open a business, I would much prefer to find women who've like run their own businesses for like 30 years and like sit down with them and be like, these are my ideas. Like, what do you think? Or like, I'm having trouble with this. Can you help me? Like, I think I'd be way more into that than like going to school to get a business degree, or even going to like a community college to do like a business admin thing or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm just much more of like a kind of like interpersonal learner rather than like a book learning. Yeah. Okay. We're close. We're not that close. 3 more pages. Okay. I don't understand why she's like, I don't understand why she's using the word blame. I mean, I guess she's taking it personally, but like, listen to this. This is like so offensive to lesbians. Listen to this. Like, regardless of what you think about bisexuals, again, I'm a lesbian reading this and I'm applying it to myself, okay? Yet, if heterosexual privileges are rights belonging to people of all sexual choices, then those who enjoy heterosexual privilege do not deserve blame. Is she basically, to me, I don't know if it's like a bad faith interpretation of what she's writing, but to me, what she's saying is like, well, you know, if you're if you're a lesbian and you want heterosexual privilege, you could choose to have sex with a man. That's how I read it, and I don't know if I'm like misrepresenting what she's saying, but that's how it read to me, and I was like, what the fuck? I think men aren't even attracted to women anymore. I think they're attracted to like a specific sex act or like a specific power dynamic or something, like, or they're like attracted to like pain or whatever. Like, I don't even think they're really into it. Have you heard there's all these men now who like they won't go down on women because they think it's like gay or something? And I'm like, that's how, what, or they think it's like gross or something. And I'm like, you want to choke them with your dick, but it's too gross for you to do that. Like, I don't fucking understand. Oh, it's been a thing for ages, says Clown World. Well, I have to be honest with you, I don't really keep track of the straights very much. Why, Ali? Because they suck at it, or because you're not into men? I can't remember. Grey Witch says that might be why fuck is an insult, why? Because men suck at it. Aqua Marina says, my art history teacher talked about the glut of images, and she worried about how it would affect our minds as we were used to the visuals only from nature for a very long time. Maple says, Gynes, I would consider this a woman-loving women's space. I don't feel comfortable talking details about sexing men. Ha ha ha. Yes. So we have a very hard line that men are not supposed to be commenting in the live chat. I'm not going to tell you you can't talk about having sex with men, but like, this is clearly not the place for that. Aqua says, she said by the time I was 20, I'd have seen more art and reproductions than all the other humans who had ever lived before. Yeah, that's true. In classical music too. So it's so interesting. You look at like concert. So like someone like, okay, who you guys know, Yo-Yo Ma, right? People know who Yo-Yo Ma is. So Yo-Yo Ma is a cellist. He's very famous, and he goes on tour all over the world, right? As a soloist, and he plays with all the symphonies. It's like his job. So this kind of like concert musician, this is like generally, when you take like a long view of history, a very recent thing, like in the last 200-ish years. It started like around basically Paganini is kind of when it started. And if you look at like Baroque and classical, which is like before that, and I mean, anyway, the skill they had was like very, very low, because the only people they were being exposed to was the people around them, and the only competition they had was the people around them. They also didn't have like a breadth of exposure to like different techniques, different like learning styles, different types of music. They were only exposed to what they had in the vicinity of them. So like now you literally will have like 12-year-olds who've been playing the violin for like 5 years who have like more technical capacity than the people who like Handel was conducting in his orchestra. And why is that? It's because they can like listen to CDs. They can watch online the technique of musicians from all over the world. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about, Aqua. It's the same thing in music. Aqua says, so our minds are not built for the volume of images within our brains. Add into that the sexual, pornographic, and violent content, and we're just hot sex monkeys messed of nastiness. It's awful. Yeah. That's part of like why a lot of Baroque music, like if you look at like Mozart concertos or something, right? The solo part is like really hard because Mozart was a good soloist. But then the orchestra part is like really, really boring because the musicians were not very good and he wanted to write to their level so it would sound decent. Anyway. Okay. I don't know. This whole section of the essay is stupid. Oh, hey, Stefan. Oh, bye, Michelle. Okay, then she has her section on the bisexual community and how it's grown a lot since the late 70s to the late 80s. And so it's interesting. Well, yeah, the whole essay is obviously stupid, but it's interesting here. So this is the polling of the members of this Boston Bisexual Women's Network. 3.3% describe their sexuality as exclusively lesbian. I really wonder, like, what it is they're doing in the maybe they have bisexual partners, or maybe they just simp a lot for the bis. I'm not quite sure, like, why they ended up there. It's a bit interesting to me. Not that they shouldn't be, but it's interesting. Okay, 6.5% percent as mostly lesbian. So I think that's like 3.3% is like a Kinsey 6. 6.5% is like a Kinsey 4 or 5. 23% is more lesbian than heterosexual. Okay, so that's like a Kinsey 4. 37% is equally, that's a Kinsey 3, right? 23% is more heterosexual than bisexual. This is a Kinsey 2, or yeah, 2. Then 6.5% is mostly heterosexual. I guess they're also like a 2 then, and then none is exclusively heterosexual. Which I think is so interesting because I bet you if you did the same survey of like whatever bisexual women's groups there are now, that you would get like similar data, but because of gender, it actually would all mean the opposite of what it means. Like none of them say they're exclusively heterosexual, which makes sense because then why the fuck are you in a bisexual women's group? But like I bet if you did the same survey in a bisexual women's group now, you would find a bunch of women who like when it comes to activity actually exclusively bisexual. So implications for the therapist. So first, the therapist must assume that any sexual identity is psychologically and morally acceptable. I mean, yeah, obviously. I agree with that. Second, the therapist needs to accompany the client through the evolution of her sexual choices. Operating on an assumption that no particular sexual identity is necessarily transient or permanent, the therapist can assist the client with a lifelong process rather than a short-term goal. Okay, true, but remember in the last essay, that psychologist talked about how when there's like a mismatch between like your perception of yourself and the behaviors you're doing, that this like puts you in like a state of like anxiety or discomfort or something. And so like it's a natural human thing to try to like psychologically contextualize your behavior as like coherent with your self-perception. So what she's just said here, to basically leave the door open and like let it always be like ambiguous, like even in, I've talked to women in here who are like, they're distressed by not knowing. They want to know. They want to have like a surety about themselves, and it's distressing that they don't have a surety about themselves. And so I think if you were in that position, you had a therapist who was like, oh yeah, it's okay if you don't know, like forever, like for years, you'd kind of be like, but can't you help me? Third, the therapist must encourage her client to make deliberate, thoughtful decisions about where, when, and whether to announce her sexual identity. No, I completely agree with this. I don't think that coming out is like, the actual act of coming out has like a moral value and is like a good act regardless of context and circumstance. Momo's clearly not distressed about the human problem. Momo! We're on the last page. Fourth, the therapist needs to be aware of the nature of the bisexual experience, including bisexual identity, bisexual relationships, and the bisexual community. Yes, that's what I said when I started the analysis of the essay. I was like, I think it's probably a good thing. Like, if you are a therapist who works a lot with lesbians and bisexual women, or even only lesbians, because how many women, there's obviously, like, I'm not saying this is like a thing about lesbians, but there are obviously women, individuals who, I've met these women who like, they say that they're lesbian for like 5 years and then they like, oh yeah, or actually I'm a bisexual. So like, obviously there's a big overlap between these groups, right? But to me, the way she's advocating an awareness of bisexuality in this is to basically eclipse any awareness of lesbianism. And I don't think that's like productive. Ali, this essay is a reading like how to keep your client in therapy for a long time. Yeah. Finally, a group therapist needs to encourage members with different sexual identities to talk together about their individual experiences in an atmosphere of respectful confidentiality and trust. Women generally need opportunities to discuss the details of their sexual lives with one another, to educate them about the breadth of sexual experience and sexual options, to form context for their own sexual choices, and to counteract feelings of isolation with their questions about sexuality. Okay, yes, but like, again, as a lesbian reading this book for lesbians, reading that, what I hear her saying is, in a group therapy situation where you have bisexual women and lesbians, the lesbians can get something out of learning about the sex that the bis are having with men. And like, again, I don't know if I'm like misrepresenting her or interpreting what she's saying in bad faith, but that's how it reads to me. Like, lesbians will get something out of learning about how women have sex with men, and they should be open to hearing those conversations and being involved in those conversations. Which plays into her thing, right? That any action you take towards being a bisexual is, regardless of your original sexual orientation, is an act towards, is a step towards, what's that word? Subversion, a step towards subversion of the patriarchy or heterosexism. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read the last two sentences of the thank you, Kaz. Yeah, you guys are all like, is it just me or you also interpreted it that way? Ali says that doesn't sound like a good thing at all. If I was a lesbian, I wouldn't want to be traumatized or grossed out by details of my therapy group sex stories. Yeah. Maple says I don't even like hearing stories about women fucking men and I'm a bisexual. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read the last two sentences of the essay. The bisexual experience calls into question traditional definitions of the nature of sexual identity development. Does it though? Okay. Fluid, ambiguous, subversive, multifarious. Bisexuality can no longer be ignored. Who is ignoring it? Like, this, the conclusion of the essay has the same problem as a lot of the current discourse about bisexuals. We're being erased and ignored, but also we have such a huge target on our back and everybody knows who we are, so they're mean to us. How can you have a huge target on your back and everybody is aware of who you are and they're mean to you, and yet at the same time nobody knows who you are? Ali says she can just fuck right off. Yeah, that's how I feel about the essay. Okay, so we got to the end of that. I need to go to the washroom. Let me check how long the next essay is. It's 5. Okay, so that's page 72 to 80. Oh, yeah. Aging lesbians, observations and speculations. Yeah, I think I'm going to read the next essay. Okay, so what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make like a nice description in this reading thing. I'll do that later. I'm going to go to the washroom. I'm going to come back. I'm going to start the next essay, okay? So I'll see you guys in like 3 seconds or something. Okay, bye.